Hello, divine creations, divine marvels, children of God. Thank you so much for joining in. I'm really excited about today's meeting. It's the first time I've done a meeting like this, and I'm really excited because I believe one of the most underemphasized and yet one of the most important aspects of Bruno Groening's teaching is what he calls not what he calls, what I call the nightly review. He instructed people to review at the end of each day, to review the day. And it's a practice I've now been doing for some time, and I've gotten so much out of it. And I honestly don't hear anyone else within the Bruno Groening community talking about it. So I'm really excited to share this practice. And I'm also really excited to apply it also to the month, to at the end of each month, to spend some time reviewing that month and reflecting, and from that reflection, taking an inventory and recognizing what do we need to change. So, oh, good. Someone in the conference room just mentioned that Alse, another person who leads communities, Alse in Norway, talks about the nightly review. I'm so glad. I didn't know that. Thank you. So first and foremost, Bruno Groening said, I call you to Ordnung. The German word is Ordnung, can be translated as order, harmony, balance. And specifically, he would speak of divine order, divine harmony. And he also instructed people, he said, call yourselves to order. So what exactly does that mean? Abstractly, we can be like, yes, I call myself to order, but what exactly on a practical level, what does that mean? Well, here's, I believe, part of the problem that we're facing, and part of the reason why we need to call ourselves to order. Here's a quote from Bruno Groening. I know that you are in the midst of everyday life. I know that you have taken in everyday habits. I know that you have been taught wrongly by people of an older generation because they had also succumbed to a force, the force of habit. So Bruno Groening's, when talking about what it is to be human and our experience of being human, Bruno Groening over and over again spoke about how most people live their lives based on habit. And that these habits were just habits and ideas that were just passed down from other people. And most of them not wise habits and information. So here's an example of, sadly, how a lot of us, and hopefully less so since we've been on the path, live our lives. And here's, this is from Powers of the Spirit, page 232. And this is Bruno Groening speaking. The sleep of such people is therefore restless and superficial, and although they sleep for a long time, they wake up unrested. In the morning, the alarm clock usually jolts them out of their restless slumber, and then here too, they do it wrongly, the wrong way around. For a sudden awakening is also a shock for the organism. Hardly they have heard the clattering of the alarm clock when they leap out of bed, jump into their clothes, gulp down a couple of mouthfuls, and off they go to work. Yes, the whole day they are dogged by the agitation and haste with which they began it. And precisely for this reason, their work does not go smoothly, friends. So here in this description, Bruno's talking about how this person started their day wrongly, and in essence, how what it's like to live a life from habit, where we just do the next thing. We don't think, we don't reflect. It's almost more like we're a machine, just kind of doing things without really being present and without reflecting. Now, Bruno Groening, on the other hand, called us to reflect, called us to actually reflect on everything. And of course, that's a huge task. And this is a place where we can start. We can start by reflecting on our previous month, and to whoever feels called to it, they can reflect on their day at the end of the day. And in a moment, I'll be getting into the practical instructions for how to do that. Bruno Groening said, consider every word and every sentence that you speak and every thought that you take in, whether it is worthy to be taken up. And consider everything quite carefully, whether you have acted properly. Call yourself to order, meaning to God. Censure yourself. It's a word we don't hear often in English. Censure means to deeply review, deeply look over. So, how to do this? How to reflect deeply on ourselves? How to consider every word, every deed, every action? Well, here's how we begin. This is from Powers of the Spirit, again, page 232. Bruno said, when you want to go to your rest in the evening, dear friends, please do not go to sleep straight away. For you take all of the muck you've burdened yourself with during the day with you into your sleep, and your body therefore can find no rest. Before a person goes to bed, they should allow all of the events of the entire day to pass in sequence before their spiritual eye. They must, to the extent that they are able, examine every experience and every thought to see whether it was right or wrong. If the thought, word, or deed was not right, then they must repent of it from their heart and firmly resolve to do better next time. Every bad thought a human being takes up, they must eventually put into effect. If they do not repent of it and discard it. That is why it is so important, dear friends, that they keep a check on and master your thoughts. So there it is. That's how Bruno calls us to reflect at the end of each day is through allowing all the events of the day to pass before, let's see, he says their spiritual eye. So we'll begin practicing in a little bit, but first let's reflect a bit. Let's reflect on order, on harmony, and on the need for that. And let's reflect on this idea of habit and the force of habit. And let's reflect on the need to reflect so that we can break ourselves out of habit and not be like the person that Bruno Groening described, who just leapt out of bed and just went to do the next thing and went to do the next thing and isn't, in a sense, is biologically alive but isn't really fully alive, just operating from habit. So we'll take a little silent time and reflect on all of this. So let's spend a little time reflecting on the month of September, reflecting on how things went. You can just let different events, these instructions that Bruno gave are to do at the end of the night, and I've done it at the end of the year, and this will be the first time I've done it at the end of the month. So let's just we can ask Bruno to guide it. Let's just let different events, we're not going to be here for hours, so we probably don't have time to review all the events of September, but let's let different events pass by our mind's eye and be very vigilant for things that weren't right, thoughts that weren't right, actions that weren't right. And as Bruno said, repent of them and then make a firm determination to do better next time. And I also like to celebrate the things that went well, noticing the things that worked. Again, letting the events of September pass before your eye, your spiritual eye, reviewing. You find something, a thought, an action that wasn't right, repenting of it. As Bruno said, If the thought, word, or deed was not right, then they must repent of it from their heart and firmly resolve to do better next time. We can look for the moments where we lost faith and recognize it for what it is. Hi, Nikki. An error, a thinking, an illusion, a delusion, and repent of it, and then determine to deepen our faith. This is, it's very simple, but it's very concrete. I just remembered, there's someone, I have a friend who sometimes she sends me really dramatic texts and she likes to have these intense conversations by text, and I just don't with anyone. And I've said this to her multiple times, and I just, as I reflected, she sent some more intense text, and I responded. Like she started this really intense conversation, and I responded, and so I just repented of it, like, oh, that was really not right, and I just like next time I'm just gonna say, I hear you're struggling, and I'm not available to talk about this by text. And so it's very small things. It doesn't, it's it's not like we have to determine all the times we almost burnt the house down or almost got in a car accident. Hopefully that didn't happen too many times in September. It's the little things where we just stepped out of order, out of harmony. What I've learned from doing this practice is, if I make an error, I'm going to repeat it. That's why Bruno calls it the force of habit. And sometimes we have to, I personally, sometimes I have to know, I have to do the same thing 4 or 5 times and notice it 4 or 5 times in the nightly review before I'm able to change it. Sometimes I'm able to change it right away. And so we can notice little things and then we can notice bigger patterns. For example, I'm noticing I've been really inspired during the month of September. And I've spent a lot of time like planning all these different things, but it's almost as if I've spent too much time planning and not enough doing. And so in this practice, we're noticing individual actions and thoughts that aren't in order. And then we can begin to notice the bigger picture, you know, like, oh, I spent way too much basically daydreaming. A little daydreaming is good. Too much daydreaming, not so good. Wow. Jerry wrote, I'm thinking that when we act out of order, it might only feel as an instant done and forgotten, or not even noticed, but by us, but remains in another's memory as a hurt and harm for quite some time. And so, yes, we truly must love our neighbors more than ourselves. And as Bruno so often said, self reflection is ever important. Thank you so much, Jerry. These little things that seem unimportant actually aren't unimportant. And as Jerry pointed out, a moment of not being mindful, we can harm another. And we may not even notice, and it might have lasting impact. Beautiful, Jerry. That's the whole That's what I love about this practice is we each it opens us up to wisdom, and it's kind of personal wisdom. For example, Jerry just had an insight. I had an insight that I spent a little bit too much time daydreaming and not enough doing. Please share other insights that come to you from this. And I just had a profound one. As I was getting ready for this community hour, I was kind of in a hurry. I was trying to eat a little, I was trying to eat, and then all of a sudden I like to open my windows to let in fresh air during the day. And I was like, I haven't let open the windows. And I lurched forward to open the window because I was in a hurry. And then I caught myself. It's like, Bruno said never to hurry. And like, it didn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to move that way, to live that way. Because in that moment, I certainly wasn't being guided by God. The impulse to open windows and let in fresh air, obviously in order, harmonious. To do it in a rushed manner, I'd say that's evil. drive in the car. So we can just notice the moments where we weren't calm, where we weren't connected, weren't calm and weren't connected to God and to ourselves, and repent on them and determine to do better. Welcome, Nick. Reviewing the month of September, just letting different parts of it come to our awareness. Just noticing the places that were out of order, out of harmony. For example, there's something going on with my body, very minor, and I'm noticing that I've been giving it too much attention. I mean, it's one thing to give tender, loving care, it's another thing to dwell on. So now I'm being here and really regretting all the negative thoughts I took in about this very minor thing. And determining, right? Because that's a habit. It's not just about this one thing. If I do it with one thing, I'm going to do it with another. So we become aware of the habit. we repent of it, we regret it, and I'm going to do better next time. And we can even ask God or Bruno for help. We can hand the habit over. Welcome to everyone who's joined in via YouTube. So, we've just been spending some time reflecting on the last month, using Bruno's very specific instructions for what to do at the end of each day and just applying it to the end of each month, or in this case, the end of September. So, I've come to a lot of insights about myself, a lot of places where, I didn't do so well here, or I didn't even notice myself dwelling on this particular issue, or I don't feel good that I treated this person that way, or every time I'm around this person, I feel nervous and I try and put on a show. So as we become aware of these things, becoming aware of them is the first step in the possibility of changing them. So now that we've reflected on September, guess what? New month, new you, new opportunity. What do you want to do different this month? What habits do you want to begin to work on shifting? I've come to the realization I want to spend less time daydreaming, more time actually writing my ideas down. I've come to the realization I want to spend less time. I often spend a lot of time practicing, not so much practicing, but imagining what I might say at a community hour. And I'd like to spend that time actually practicing the teachings, living them myself. I've realized that um, yes, that when I'm nervous around certain people, or I really like someone and want them to like me, I get nervous and I sometimes put on a little bit of a show and don't want to do that anymore. There's no need to impress anyone. I just want to impress God. So these are the kind of insights that can come from this practice. And now let's spend a few minutes asking God and Bruno for help to make these changes. So first we recognize the patterns, the habits, and then um, we really determine, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to grow in this area. I'm going to release this, etc., etc. And we can get very specific ideas. For example, every time I think about this burden, I can give it away again and just repeat to myself, nothing is impossible, nothing is incurable. This is not an illness. This is a healing in progress. We can be guided to very definite ways to make these changes. And this includes thoughts. In the section I read, Bruno said, every bad thought a human being takes up, they must eventually put into effect if they do not repent of it and discard it. So we're not just reflecting on our actions, we're reflecting on our thoughts. For example, before I got really frantic to open my window, I got frantic to open my window because fresh air is healthy, but I stressed myself out in the process of opening the window. The thought was something like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time, or I better do it now. I think the thought was, I don't have enough time. So I need to really give that thought away. And it's not true. And it's very stressful thought. All right, dear ones, begin to be wrapping up. Um, Thank you so much for joining in. As I said, this is the first time I've done this kind of meeting. Very fruitful. I'd like to do more of it. Absolutely. And if the nightly review isn't a part of your practice, I invite you to do it, even just for a couple minutes, and see what you discover about yourself and see if it helps you. It's been life-changing for me. And I feel, for me, the nightly review really, in some ways, it's one of the essential things that Bruno Groening taught, because Bruno taught that this earth is a school. In fact, he called it a play school, and that we're here to learn. And with the nightly review, the learning can be, it's like every day is school. And then the nightly review is like The studying every day is like a test in essence. And the nightly review is like, oh, how'd I do on the test? And let me prepare to do better for next time. We don't have to call it test. Some people find the word test stressful, but I'm speaking metaphorically. It's an opportunity to learn from our mistakes and grow and free ourselves from the force of habit. So we'll spend a little time in silence, continuing to reflect if that feels good. See, I just caught myself. I have a friend who always calls me to do something at like just not the right time, where it's a little bit stressful, where it's not quite right. Um, and I normally say yes because I really like this person. We really have a good time. It's just not fully harmonious. And so I was just, I've been this person, same thing. Like they asked to connect today, and it's like close, but not quite. And I was thinking about saying yes. And then in reflecting, I was like, wait, how many times have I said yes when it was not 100% of a yes? And it's just like wait for the time when it's fully aligned, and then say yes. So I wish you all beautiful, beautiful self-reflection and self-insight. And the long and short of it is Bruno Groening said we're children of God, and that there's more good in store for us than we can even fathom. In essence, we have a divine inheritance that we are worthy of, and there's some work to do. Normally in human terms, an inheritance you don't really have to do anything for. Like it's just there for you. Spiritual inheritance, we need to work for it a little bit. As Bruno said, if you want to have the divine experience, or if you want to experience, the German's a little tricky. Do you want the divine experience, or do you want the divine experience? Then you must strive for it. And so this is actually a pretty pleasurable and easy way to strive towards all that good, all the good that God has in store for us. Thank you so much for joining in. Take care. Much love and much good energy and power.